Well, today we're in the kitchen garden and we're going to be planting a fruit tree guild, which is just such an easy and simple way to create a low maintenance, but at the same time, a really powerful food growing system, which is essentially centered around the fruit tree. It can be also around a shrub or a nut tree, but we'll be talking about fruit trees. Now I'll be sharing 6 essential types of plants you'd want to include around your fruit tree to help improving soil, weed suppression, attract pollinators, even deter pests. And I'll show you the 2 other fruit tree guilds I already have planted a few years ago, what my observations are, what I prefer maybe to change or what I wouldn't do again. But let's plant one up today. Really simple, really easy, nothing fancy at all. Small seedlings, no massive makeover that's maybe undoable in your own garden. Put it in practice, get it planted, and yeah, because it's going to be such a valuable ecosystem to add into any part of the garden. And we're just doing it here in the kitchen garden. So first of all, these 2 apple tree guilds that I have here, one on either side of me, have been probably featured the most throughout the sort of kitchen garden videos, and I've done one specific video as well, which raised a lot of questions. People had a lot of questions about it, which was just so fantastic because there are so many videos. If I be watching on YouTube, I'd usually go into comment section and say, okay, has somebody already asked that question? What was the answer if the question wasn't answered straight away in the video? And one of the most common questions I had is, what is the rootstock of these trees? Because obviously, first of all, they're in such a small area and the trees are low as well. And the answer is that it's a very common semi-dwarfing rootstock, M26. It's readily available for all apple trees in Irish garden centres, unless it's been noted that it's for orchard growing. So usually you could assume, you obviously always check, but you could assume that it's on a semi-dwarfing rootstock. So really, you're not expecting a tree on a semi-dwarf rootstock to go above 4 meters. As you see here, these trees, especially this guy on this side of me, is, let's say, over 2 meters, and I try to keep them low. They have been planted now 4 years ago, and the trees themselves probably around 6, 7 to 8 years old. But I also tend to prune them twice a year, once in summer and once over winter or just very early spring, if I see that there's branches that are broken or physically just needs to be pulled back, especially in this walkway area, the walkway that takes us onto the field side. Otherwise, the space that's here is really small, and that's why something like that would fit in so perfectly into any town garden, city gardens, allotments, you know, private gardens, because it's a really healthy ecosystem where plants are helping each other out, and at the end of the day, what you get out of it is healthier tree, healthier fruit, more abundant harvests. And obviously, if you end up combining more edible plants on the lower part of the tree as well, you'll even have a bigger chance of harvesting food. So that's the rootstock question. That was the most common question I got asked. But you can also do it on a fully dwarfing rootstocks. It's just the plants that are going to be around the trees. Then, let's say if you're doing espalier or stepovers, they just need to be slightly lower as well, or we'll be talking about the actual positioning of it. But this is what 2 guilds look like that are at least 3-4 years old now. Maybe it's actually even 4. The time absolutely flies. But let's go over to the tree that we want to build the guild around and purposely pick the plants that will create a cohesive ecosystem around it and support the growth of the main plant, which is the tree, and then the rest of the plants themselves as well. So even though this is also a young tree, let's say 4 or 5 years old, anything that I'm doing, I could easily do for the trees that are in the orchard that have been there for decades. They're large trees. That does not matter. That's the beauty of the guilds. So ideally, the space what you look at, or like how much ground you'd be ending up covering is how big the canopy of the tree is. So if you're keeping a tree really compact and tight, the underplanting can also be small, made up of smaller plants, nothing elaborate. And the bigger the tree canopy itself, the bigger volume of plants, or even you could just do bigger group plantings of the same plant. That's the only difference. As I said, there's 6 plant types that ideally you would mix together, and this is not going into any kind of food forests where you'd have even the fungal layer or fungi layer and the climbers. Nothing like that. It's really simple, really easy. It's so doable. And the space I have here, so what I'm happy to allocate for this guild, one way it's 1.2 meters, or that's 4 foot, and the other way here it's 1.1 meters or so, and that's about 3 foot 8 in the size. So that's it. That's the only space I'm allowing for it, because also with this tree I'm trying to keep it as compact and tight in shape as the other 2. And even though I planted the tree itself last year, I didn't plant anything specifically in here. Anything that's here is self-sown, so there's a lot of calendula here at the moment, and some borage as well, and then there's weeds, so the weeds definitely need to be removed. And I'm just pulling up some calendula as well. Now I'm fully pulling them up. I don't need to transplant them. I have a lot of calendula, self-sown calendula popping up in all different areas, so I'm going to take out a few from here, and I'll just explain to you why. So I have plants growing around the tree already. I'm going to remove a lot of them, but regardless of what plant grows where or why I'm removing it, the essential thing is to allow the tree itself to have a bit of space. And ideally you would allocate about 30 centimeters or a foot around the perimeter of the trunk of the tree. So if I would draw sort of a line around the trunk of the tree of 1 foot or 30 centimeters, that's what I'd want to keep clear for the root run of the tree itself. So I just don't want any plants, other plants' roots to go into that space. Now there's a borage that's right just on the borderline of it. I can leave that, but then like so the calendulas, they can all come out in that perimeter. So I've cleared up a bit around here, so I've left a little bit of calendula and borage here. And ideally, before you also start picking your plants or thinking about the planting areas, you'd know which side of the tree is north and which is south, just from the sake of making sure that you don't plant very tall plants to the south side that will cast shade on already darker shade of the tree, and you're just going to be able to balance out your plants like that. Think about maybe even like your different layers, the tall layer, which is the tree, middle layer, ground layer. That's how we're going to go about it. So once you've got your fruit tree, the first type of plants you would need are dynamic accumulators, and these are just a group of plants that would get their nutrients from deeper levels of soil. So basically their roots will actually penetrate the soil system way deeper than anything else, and they would throw it up. So once the plant throws the nutrients up, it stores it in its stems, in its leaves, and after you cut it down and let's say lay it even on the soil itself, the decaying material will release that material back. And that is one of the reasons I left the borage there, because borage happens to be one of these dynamic accumulators. And the biggest hero out of that group of plants tends to be Comfrey. Again, it has deep taproot and it has real fleshy stems and big voluptuous leaves. And the beauty of that plant is that not only you can harvest its leaves to use as a mulch on the soil, and then once the mulch decays, it actually releases the nutrients to the soil, so to all of the plants around itself, and it's beneficial already in a different group of plants. but it also has beautiful flowers that are really attractive to pollinators, which is another group of plants that's also needed for a healthy guild. And that's the beauty when you start choosing plants. Some of the plants will already tick a few boxes, so you don't need to have a massive array of different plants. You could literally just bulk up on a couple of them, and that's it. And that's the beauty of making it as simple as possible. You don't have to have anything too fancy. And also, if you already have plants in the garden that you know that are growing well, and those plants will also tick those boxes of the types of plants you need that I'll keep telling you about, then you're even a bigger winner in overall in this. But I have a Comfrey plant here. Now this doesn't look very dynamic at the moment. It looks quite sorry for itself, but it is because that I did pull it out of the planter it was in. It's planted in a pot. But you do have to be a little bit careful with Comfrey, especially if you go for the common Comfrey, because it can self-seed, and obviously if it takes hold of an area with its own deep tap roots, it might be quite hard to eradicate it from that space. But this is the Russian Comfrey of Bucking 14, and the only way you can propagate this is through the root cutting. So you do have to actually physically get a piece of its root to be able to grow that plant, because the seeds in here are sterile. For this size of a space, all I need is one plant. That's all I'm going to use in this space. I'm going to be planting it to the sort of southwest corner of this planter, because that's where our prevailing winds are from. And if the leaves or stems get any bit damaged by the wind, obviously it becomes already a mulch then, and the main part of the plant is not going to be damaged. So its branches can be broken, its leaves can be broken. It does no harm to it. So as we're talking about the biggest of plants, and we're trying to figure out the space plan, just to make sure that the big plants have enough space allocated in the guild, the next category is the mulchers. So usually these are also plants that have the biggest of leaves or stems, and their leaves usually are what becomes as a mulching material for the soil. It will keep the weed growth to the minimum, it will enhance the water retention, and overall it will nourish the soil again. As the leaves are decaying, it will nourish it. And the Comfrey in that area, in that allocation, will do exactly the same thing. But I am also going to add the same lupin. The lupins I am so thrilled about. I'm also going to add a lupin to that area, but there's another reason why I definitely want to add legume family plant actually. Now I have the lupins planted, and before I talk about them, I'll actually mention the third category, which would be suppressors. Basically are any plants that with their own growth will just cover the soil area or make the space very inhabitable for weeds. Basically that's the main category, but also with their own habitat can again create the same idea as the mulchers do, where they will keep the soil weed free, they will keep the soil temperature cooler. It's just that with the mulchers, as they keep dropping the leaves, or you do chop and drop on them, eventually they can actually help to grow soil for you. So that is just that little fine line. But like your suppressors, what I'll be adding to here will be even strawberries, because of their habitat, because of their wide leaves. But even bulbous plants can be suppressants, or let's say your garlic or tulip. So there's such a fine line of what you'd consider. You can throw them in a way nearly all into one. Mulchers, suppressants, but that was the third category. And the fourth, before we go to the pretty things, will be the nitrogen fixers. So like the lupins, what I planted there. But basically it's any of the legume family plants. So think of peas or beans even. As long as you leave the roots in the soil, that you don't ever pull out the roots from the soil. Now the beauty of the legume family plants is that they harness the nitrogen that's available in the air, they take it down into the roots and they store them in these little nodules on the roots. And obviously the plant is doing it for their own benefit. So that's why it's wise to deadhead them after flowering. So after they've flowered, and obviously the pollinators have benefited from the nectar and you've benefited looking at those beautiful flowers, it's beneficial to actually not allow the seed pods to form. So obviously in the case of peas or beans, that if you wanted to harvest those peas and beans, it would be better not to do it. Actually deadhead them after flowering so that the plant itself is not going to use up that nitrogen, because at the end of the season, when either the plant itself naturally dies down or you cut it down, those roots will stay in the soil as the plant and the plant material is decaying, the roots are decaying underground. That's all going to be released back into the soil, because the plants tend to use up more nitrogen in the soil than phosphorus or potassium. So that's why we want to add a few nitrogen fixing plants, legume family plants, into guild as well. So I have the lupin, and I'm actually going to also add this little sad looking sweet pea. But I had sweet peas here growing last year. They were really beautiful array of flowers, strong plants, and this seedling I have was just one late bloomer, so I'm going to add that to it. I'm going to add it quite close so it can climb up the trunk, but that's my last sweet pea seedling then. Now I had to take a quick break to water the actual ground and the plants that I had already planted. The soil was so dry, and a lot of the plants that I had already in the pots, the soil had actually dried out inside there as well, so it wasn't the best way to plant them. Now I left the last two plant groups till the very end because they're the pretty ones. They're the ones that I consider the pretty ones, because one is the pollinator-friendly plants, which means obviously if pollinators like them, they have to have flowers, so they're the most floral plants. And then the other one is repellents. So these would be either again a flowering plants, or that it's through their stem or leaves or roots that's something that's repelling the pests in the garden. So any flowering plants really you can add here now, anything that fits within your size and shape and colour scheme and space that you have available. So for me now in this case is borage. Borage borage flowers are actually beautiful from the point of they're edible, but also they keep replenishing the nectar in them, so they last way longer before they set seed. I have the lupins, bumblebees love them, and obviously then I have the sweet pea as well, the calendula, both repellent, both attractor or pollinator friendly plant. And what I'm also adding here is rosemary. Perfect with its scent, it will repel pests, but once the flowers come, pollinator friendly. And the second one is chives. Again, it can act as a suppressor first of all, because it's very dense clump forming. Once the foliage dies down during the winter, that becomes a suppressor, a mulcher as well. And when it flowers, like it's flowering behind me in the other fruit tree guild, the flowers are absolutely stunning. Everything is edible, and the pollinators like it. So let me plant them in here as well. In the existing gills, I have yarrow or a Kelia in both of them, and these are in these beautiful pastel colors. And then I have lavender here in the front as well. And obviously you see the chives, beautifully those pom-pommy looking flowers flowering away. There is a fennel here as a pest-repellent, but that's the one plant now that I will be taking out. It's just a little bit too big for the space. It's self-seeded. I dug up its mother plant already a year ago, and it has kept growing in here. This spring especially actually grew big. And previously I would have had chamomile, tall variety chamomile plants here, as well as a pollinator-friendly plant. And I've taken that out as well. I've located it onto the field only because it self-seeds so easily. So if you can gather as many perennials as possible, so where you don't need to replace it or you don't have to worry even self-seeding point of it, the easier maintenance it's going to be. And overall, just to keep observing what plants like your particular climate, your location, your soil, and build on those. Right, I had to come and sit down because I didn't realize actually how hard it was going to be on my ligaments to be talking to you on this kind of a low level and then trying to hide underneath the tree branches. But the gildies plant that actually looks really good. It is quite full. I knew the plants were going to be small, but the main points to take away from this is, first of all, use plants that are available for you, that grow well for you, and that you might already have in the garden and you could propagate off, so that you'll save money and you know they're happy to grow in the garden anyway, and that just happen to tick those boxes or fall under those categories that I mentioned. And then look at the aspect of the shade loving plants versus plants that can deal with a bit of exposure. Definitely add plenty of plants that you just love the look of. Avoid anything with really vigorous root systems. So let's say I didn't add mint here, I didn't add clover in here, I didn't add nasturtium into this one, which I probably could have. I don't have nasturtiums ever taking over in areas. Dill would be another really good plant to add, especially as we're dealing with vegetable area and the kitchen garden area, but I usually have dill popping up in different areas anyway. But mint I have in a big planter separately because it would only go rampant and crazy. And yeah, you don't want to have anything that will overpower the rest of the plant. So as I said, what I removed or going to be removing from my initial plants, one is the fennel, that's not a bulbous fennel, that's the fennel for seed, and then the other one was chamomile. Self-seeded a little bit too quickly and it grew quite tall, but I do actually still have to fill that hole that it has created. So I'll see, maybe I'll add another rosemary to that space. I have actually used creeping thyme on the ground level as a suppressant plant. You don't need actually that many different variety plants, just a few will do, especially if they're the ones that tick multiple boxes for you, and your tree will be happy. Also for my situation here, considering I have two gills now in that terrace planter, if I want to go even bigger and more elaborate, I could join those gills up. I could either plant a third tree in the middle, or I could use fruit bushes in between as well. I probably would want to choose something that hasn't got thorns, so gooseberries wouldn't be part of it. But I could absolutely join them up and just add more plantings in them. But at the moment I do want to use some of that ground for annual vegetable growing as well. But that is the beauty of the gills. They can look really ornamental, but at the same time be very practical. So I hope that gave you some kind of idea or inspiration to maybe plant your own one as well. And otherwise, if you have some favorite plants and you are already doing this kind of a gill planting or polyculture planting, and if you have some favorite plants, do let me know in the comments. I do like to keep learning what people use, the other favorites are out there. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.